Michael, we both know that the dualist solution to the mind-body problem, that there are two independent, fundamental levels of existence, a physical and a non-physical or a spiritual, while believed traditionally by much of the world and even today by most common people, is very much looked down upon in the academy by philosophers and scientists today. So from the Catholic point of view, how do you defend dualism in light of the intellectual criticisms that it gets almost dismissed by contemporary intellectuals?
So the church has been thinking a long time about this question of dualism and its relationship between our identity and consciousness. And I would say that I work within a philosophical theological tradition known as Thomism that would argue for a duality in human identity without falling into a strict dualism in the sense of two separate substances that mysteriously interact with one another. So in this perspective of duality, we appreciate very much the biological grounds for different expressions of consciousness and our identity. And at the same time, recognize that there are certain acts, manifestations of the human being, abstract thought, rational moral choice, that seem to bring us beyond the particularities of sensation. So the church has actually addressed rather critically certain ancient understandings of substance dualism, and I think correctly so, because it's very hard to understand how we get a kind of interaction between these two different substances, where or how that takes place. I think that that perennial problem that Descartes and so many others have been wrestling with dissolves a bit when we understand that the church does not present two separate substances, body and soul, but rather two irreducible co-principles. So a form, a soul, that is the principle of unity, that accounts for why this matter energy here is a human body and not matter energy of a different kind, of a different animal, or of a different inanimate entity.
So how is that instantiated? What is that? How do you get those two features out of the same thing?
So I think that we can look around in the visible world and we recognize, for instance, that beings come into existence, right? There's generation, there's the process of nutrition, right? Maybe some animals eat other animals, and then there's this corruption where some animals die. And we realize, well, there's a certain similarity there between the matter, between this principle, kind of a matter energy that can be the makeup of a certain creature in one moment and then of another. So that's why Aristotle, Aquinas, and so many other thinkers start to posit that there must be some other principle that accounts for giving an organization and distinguishing that type of matter from this type of matter. And so these two co-principles are what make up a single substance. And there are many different ways of reflecting on how this body-soul relationship plays out. I know that some philosophers look at the example of making a simple judgment, doing something like going outside, looking at an oak tree and saying, that is a tree. Well, a lot is happening in that simple judgment because we basically are predicating a universal tree to a concrete particular, that oak tree. That's quite fascinating because we seem to have one single human being, one agent who is united, both sensing and abstracting, going beyond the particulars, because tree can refer to any tree of any type, of any time. It extends indefinitely into the past and into the future. So that's what I mean by moving beyond these particularities. So the hylomorphic system wants to account for these lived experiences that most of us have every day of our life, of both sensing as animals and also reasoning as intellectual beings. Now, there's also a fascinating dimension that seems to distinguish us that needs some accounting, and that would be the realm of moral agency. And here I think that consciousness studies have often focused primarily on important questions of the what and of the how, but there are certain dimensions of the why that I think are worth exploring further. And the Catholic Church has this long tradition of introspection, of personal reflection, practice, say, of the examen of conscience that we do at different periods of our lives, where we can enter into that interior realm and assess our own life. We can reflect on the past actions and see if they're in accord with our ideals, with our goals. And then we can also actively choose and resolve to perform different acts and even to become different people. So I would like to see consciousness studies continue to address these important questions of the what and the how, but also think of some of these why questions of how personal introspection can open us up into growth for the good of all of society.